All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining me. I am Andy with Integrity Data Insights, and I help other companies with their reporting and their analytics. And I'm super thrilled to have my guest on the show, Jeff Shaffer. Um, he is a legend in the Tableau space and now in the AI space as well. So um, thanks so much, Jeff, for joining me.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. Excited.
So Jeff and I met at a Tableau user group meeting years ago, and Jeff's always been, on top of Tableau. That's what I've kind of always, our interactions have been. And so I understand you got inducted into the Tableau Visionary Hall of Fame. Is that right? That's
I
incredible.
did a couple years back. Yeah, they changed the name from Tableau Zen Master and changed it to Tableau Visionary. And I was you have to be selected 5 years as a Tableau Visionary. And I think there's 23 of us in the Hall of Fame, which
Wow.
you know I guess it means I'm supposed to know a little bit about Tableau. I guess that's what I figure. So
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And anybody that knows Jeff knows he definitely does. So, but yeah, so you're in kind of a fairly, I guess, different role a little bit. I mean, you're still doing a lot of it with Tableau, but you're now at University of Cincinnati, and I believe you're the director of the Applied AI Lab. Is that right?
yeah, that's pretty new. So, after 28, almost 29 years in financial services, I was at a fintech. I was the chief operating officer for 7 years and ran the company. I did IT and analytics for 10 years and had a data science team and business intelligence team. And during that time, I mean, back when we met, I think when we were doing the Tableau user group, I think it might have been even at UC. We had a pretty strong, sort of Tableau user group in the UC area. But I was an adjunct faculty back then and started teaching data visualization and had Tableau in my course. And then 3 years ago, I guess now, I joined UC full time as a professor. And in addition to teaching data visualization, I teach some other courses and got involved in AI. I'm teaching an AI class this fall at UC and was just recently appointed as the director of the Applied AI Lab.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah,
congratulations. That's
thank
super
you.
exciting. Yeah, I
Thank you.
remember when we were talking, preparing for this, that was like open up a whole new world with me. So I was even more excited than I already was to talk to you because obviously AI is all the rage. And so I understand you've been kind of doing some training. I don't know if you'd call it training or what, but maybe kind of general education and kind of the public and, getting leaders up to speed. Maybe tell me a little bit about more what you're doing in that area.
Yeah, so we do that through the Center for Business Analytics here at the University of Cincinnati. Again, I've been involved with that since that group started, and always done trainings through there. Have done a lot of Tableau training. We have a beginner and advanced Tableau training course. More recently, they've spun up Power BI, and they do Power BI training. They've done other trainings like data management, SQL. I teach data visualization and some other courses, but the one that's brand new that I've been teaching more than any other in the last 12, 18 months has been generative AI. And so ever since ChatGPT, kind of came on the market, that's been a really, really popular class. We've done public classes on generative AI for business. And then recently been doing a lot of private trainings for companies here in Cincinnati. Some larger companies have been doing sort of AI for everyone and really trying to get their company up to speed, specifically on generative AI and how they can use it in the workplace. So that's been relatively new and been really popular the last year.
Yeah, and you said like and this is coming from Jeff, who you've done a ton of Tableau training. I think you told me that you've even done even more of this recently. Like it's that in demand, right? With what people
Yeah,
are
it's
asking.
so popular. I've been spending more time in the last 18 months. I've had more workshops and more attendees at the workshops. They've been packed on generative AI over other classes like Tableau and data visualization. We still do those other classes. We just did a Tableau training not
Right.
too long ago. We have one coming up in the fall, but generative AI is really the big one. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it a little bit. I know you have some slides, and I can put that on the screen as well. But Maybe just get us up to speed. I mean, obviously I know I know some of this stuff. Maybe people don't, but maybe just walk us through, what is all this stuff? What is an LLM and all that you're showing here? Just walk us through this.
Yeah, there's so many terms that people throw around, so I like to put it in a box, if you will, and this is my box. AI has been around for a really long time. There's nothing new about AI, and AI doesn't have to be thought of as the most advanced thing we can do. AI can sometimes be very simple. AI is really just the idea that you're trying to simulate human intelligence. And the example I always give is I can make it rule based, and I can say, okay, if an if then statement, that everybody in computer programming learns, or even in Tableau we learn. But if somebody knocks at the door, we then say hello, right? And that
Right.
imitates human behavior. And then as we move down, the spectrum and get more advanced, we get things like machine learning, where the machine is automatically learning and trying to improve without that explicit programming, without giving it all the rules, right? That if there's a knock on the door, we say hello. And so it can learn from our actions, or more specifically from the data. And so then it just learns that when there's a knock on the door, we can say, hello. And deep learning is something that, is more recent with the advent of, there's a lot of things that kind of came together in the world of generative AI to make it what it is. But one of the pieces was deep learning, and having the computational power, the neural network structure, and the computational power to layer on these layers in a neural network enabled us to do this deep learning, if you will, and that gives us more power to predict things, or to learn things, if you will. Ultimately, these things are predicting, an outcome of some sort. And that leads to where we are today with the term generative AI, which, is really a subset of that deep learning. And so with the neural net, been around for a very long time. Then the advent of the GPU, which is a relatively, newer learning that we figured out we can do calculations on a GPU faster than a CPU, and gives us these high speeds, right? Then we add to it there's a foundational paper that came out in 2017 that talks about this transformer architecture. And so that's another piece of the puzzle, that you have this new idea of a transformer. And then the last piece of the puzzle, the fourth, leg of the stool, was the data. You have to have data to train on. And so if we think about what they did, OpenAI and folks, they scraped the world of data, using all of the data out there from the internet and Wikipedia and all of the sources and books and all of these things, and you put all that together, and it creates a new thing that took the world by storm. ChatGPT had 1 million users in 5 days, and 100 million users in, I think it was 2 months, the fastest ever to get those kind of numbers. And why did it take over the world? And that was the advent of putting all those pieces together and creating these LLMs. And, the interesting thing is OpenAI had been out there for a while. They had an API that people were using. Data scientists were using it. I mean, it really wasn't anything new. They put a shiny UI on it and opened it up for the world to chat with. And all of a sudden, everybody, sort of realized the power of this thing, of like, wow, this thing can do all sorts of things. And then when you add more computational power to it, you build huge clusters of GPUs, and you throw more and more data at it, then what do you get? You get better and better models that are predicting. And so ultimately, that's where we land with these large language models. The idea is it generates human-like text, or images. Now, there's other generative AI besides just, large language models, but images and videos and music and all sorts of things at this point. And so AI, we're kind of in the AI revolution, right? Everything's AI now, and AI is kind of landed with everything.
I think it'll be one of those things where, like, you'll kind of always remember, like, where were you when you first used ChatGPT or one of these tools? Like, it's kind of one of those. It'll probably be one of those kind of things. So talk about a little bit about the hype of. I'll take this off the stage just for now,
Yeah.
but tell us a little bit about. There's obviously a ton of hype around AI, and some of it may be warranted, some of it may not. Like I tell this all the time, is like, I got two teenage daughters, and for some reason they're like scared of it, or they don't. I don't know. I think they've been influenced by something that they hear. So it's like, I don't know. Just, I guess, what are you hearing out there? What kind of things? What's
Yeah.
what? Share your experience in that area.
Well, first and foremost, I'm all in, right? I'm an AI guy. So, and as director of Applied AI Lab, right? I mean, how wouldn't I be? So I think this is absolutely a game changer. It's going to change everything, and at a scale that we don't even know yet. I don't even think we as society even understand what the long-term impacts of this is to the workforce and to the way we
Right.
work and how we work. And so I think we're at the very, very small, cusp of that. And, if you want to look at the hype cycle, sure, people will say AI can do everything, will do everything. And maybe that's true at some point. But as it stands today, I think at least here at UC, we're in the business college, and you'll notice the AI lab is the applied AI lab. We talk about applying it, that, we still have to think about what it is it's good at least as of today, where we stand right now. What is it good at? What problems can it solve versus throwing it at everything? The world is going to throw it at everything. Microsoft's embedding it into Word and Excel and
Yeah.
PowerPoint, and Tableau putting it in their tool with Einstein. And, it's going to be in every workflow of everything that we do. So you're not going to have to go necessarily out to Chat GPT to do your task and then come back to whatever tool you're in. You're going to be in Google, in Gmail, or in Word, or in Outlook, and you're just going to say, write an email, right? And that already exists with the tools that we're at. We're not talking about the future. Those things are here.
Right.
So I think it's going to be in our workflow. The thing is, there are things that it's not good at as of today. Right now, you just have to understand what it's good at and what it's not good at. And I think the analogy, when we talked the last time, I said, it's the old adage of, when you have a hammer, every problem is a nail. With
Right.
AI, my saying has moved to is, now I have a really powerful high-speed nail gun, and so I'm just shooting nails into everything, right? And if you have a problem that calls for nails, then it's a great solution. If you are trying to paint a wall, then not such a great solution. And so that's my current view of
Yeah.
AI, which is, we have to be careful of applying it to everything, because it is already, and I'm not saying it won't be in everything. It's coming to everything, but as
Yeah.
it stands today, it might not be the best tool to solve your business problem. And so what
Yeah.
I would suggest, and what I like, an approach we use a lot here around UC with some of the other professors, but what is the business problem we're trying to solve? What is it? And I may be able to solve it with AI, but there may be a simpler or easy solution. There may be a problem that you actually do need or could solve with AI, but it doesn't solve your whole problem. I call this the needle in the haystack, for example. Maybe the AI won't easily find the needle for you, but it'll help you burn the haystack down by 80%. And so now
Right.
you only have to work with 20% of the hay, right? It makes your job more efficient to whatever you're trying to do. It may not replace the job, it just may make you more efficient at what you're trying to accomplish. And so I think we're seeing that, for example,
Yeah.
in coding. That's a big one. GitHub Copilot, or the new Cursor app is phenomenal, where you're now in the flow, where you can use generative AI not to replace you as a coder, but to help you as a coder, and it works with you, and it completes things, or it'll write things for you, and it'll work with you. It'll help you comment or debug or things like that. And so
Yeah.
that's my general, That was a lot of
Yeah.
words, but
No,
my
I
general
love it. I love it.
philosophy.
Yeah. I did recently, I don't know, a few months back, I bit the bullet and got a subscription to the Microsoft Copilot. So for Office, so I definitely am not. I feel like I've only scratched the surface on what I use it for, but I definitely have used it quite a bit. Just some insight, like when I'm doing these lives, typically what I'll do is I'll have the questions I create, I come up with, and I'll run it through it and say, hey, help me write a post or help me summarize this. And then, it's a conversation. It's not like it gets it 100% right away. Usually, and and that's, I know it's something you teach as well that I could probably benefit from, is more prompt engineering and more, kind of interacting with it more. But it's super helpful because it's like, that's what I tell people. It's not like it's not, it's not like it's cheating or it's doing it for you. It's just, it's taking what I do and polishing it and making it better, right? And then there's parts of it I don't like, and I don't use that part, and I'll refine it. But I mean, like, for me to have to sit there and come up with the brain power to kind of take all these questions and kind of summarize them into a few bullets. I mean, that's like, I don't know, it's been a game changer for me in my experience using it in that way.
Yeah, and those are good points there. I'll hit on a few of them. One is I think we have to get away from the nonsense of our children, cheating. This is, we are in a paradigm shift here. And so we have to rethink all of that. We got to get away from the idea of they use Chat GPT to cheat. It's like, what do you mean? They use Chat GPT to do it, which in the real world, that's what they're going to do, right? It's the same thing of, why am I asking them to memorize things for a test? It's like that doesn't help them for, so that they're good at memorizing things. You
I
want
would
them to
agree.
learn, right? And figure out how to do stuff. And these are tools that they need to learn. So I can tell you, I have a daughter in Cincinnati public schools. It's one of the most frustrating things because they have not only no AI policy, they can't use AI for anything. They can't even have their phones in the classroom anymore, and I get it, the disruption and all of the social media things, but we're doing a disservice if we don't teach these kids at a young age that this is the new calculator, this is the new internet, right? This is where you're going to go to get your information. And if they don't know how to use it properly, then I think we're doing a disservice. So I think we have to get away from the ideas. And so people say, well, wait a minute, they're just using ChatGPT to write their essay. Well, step back. Why are we asking them to write an essay in the first place? What's the point of the essay, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are you asking them to write an essay because you're trying to teach them how to write? Well, then let's use ChatGPT to teach them how to write. Are we asking them to write an essay because we're trying to prove they read a book that they were supposed to read? Okay, then maybe we can do that in a different way, right? And so I think we have to, at least from an education standpoint, I think about a lot of that as a professor. I have a very open policy on generative AI. I tell my students, I encourage you to use it any way you want to use it. Please, use it. So I think that's an important thing to talk about.
Yeah, that's really good because my daughter, I have two daughters, but one of them's going into, secondary, or not secondary education, sorry, but maybe, from fourth grade on, I guess it is. So I'm telling her, like, like, you're going to have to try to figure out the best way to integrate this into your, so, I'm doing my part to try to encourage them, but there's a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of people that are scared of things. And I think if they just tried it, they may not be. So.
Well, and then you brought up the second point is you mentioned prompt engineering. And that's where I think a lot of people, if they don't understand, again, what these models are good at the heart of it, they're probabilistic models. The best explanation that I've heard, people say is you're asking the Chat GPT to write me an essay, and that engine is writing letter by letter without hitting the backspace at all, without editing a word or a letter, only moving forward, is writing an essay from start to finish.
And you see it kind of before your eyes, right?
Yeah, and that's like, I mean, if you think about it, it's like that's a kind of an impossible task that you're asking. Even for the AI, is like humans would never write like that, right? And so a great example of your prompt engineering is if you want better results, you have to ask the right questions in the right way. So instead of asking it, for example, to write an essay blindly, you ask it to say, give me an outline of the topics for this essay, and tell me how we're going to give me the parts of the essay, and then put that together as a draft of an essay, and then edit the essay. So you're doing the exact same thing that you might do as a human, but you're now doing it with an assistance of AI. And the reality is if you do those steps as if a human would write that essay with the AI, you'll get a much, much better result than if you just say, write me an essay on this topic.
Right.
That just starts blindly.
No, that's great. Any quick tips like with the prompts? I mean, I know, we don't want to get into the weeds too much, but is there any quick tips like you can share with, like, I don't know, like say my example, maybe use that as a real world example. Like, when I'm using it to help me write these, announcements for, hey, I'm going to have Jeff Shaffer on the show. And I kind of have, any advice for how you would prompt the, ChatGPT or, Copilot, that kind of thing?
Yeah, the first one I'll tell you is the first one that I would say is chain of thought, is what we talk about a lot. The way that we think of things, again, if you were trying to do something hard or even medium hard, you would break it down into parts. You don't try to do the whole thing in one task. And so the idea is you do the same thing with your prompts. And so I'll use a crazy example.
Sure.
How do I, you don't ask ChatGPT how to solve world hunger, right? It's not going to just give you the answer to that. Now that's crazy, to think that it could come up with that, but someday AI probably will solve something like that. Your task, whatever it is, try to break it up into pieces and just step through it step by step. And don't be afraid to collaborate with it along the way. If it's not what you want, it's better to fix it early on, because then if it's not what you want, it kind of has a compounding effect, as it goes through the answers. And so that's the idea, is to break it down into pieces and work the pieces and then put the pieces together. That would be a good example for, data analysis. You can give it an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV, something like ChatGPT or Copilot, and you can say, hey, do exploratory data analysis, and it'll do a whole bunch of stuff. But if you really want to study or learn the data, then you could help it, step through and say, hey, do this, and then do this, and then create this chart and create this chart. And so I find stepping through it is a good tip. My other tip in structuring it would have to do with just some parts of the prompt, if you will. The parts of the prompt would have to do with like how you input the here. I'll share one more screen with you here on prompt engineering, if I could. But here, let me share that. So you can set up a persona. You can do all this through prompting. So everything you're seeing here is through prompting, but you can set up a persona and say, explain this to me like a sixth grader. Well, then the language it comes back with is going to be simple language that is, explainable, right? That somebody in the sixth grade would understand. Or explain it to me as a college professor who's very familiar with machine learning. Well, that's going to give me different language, right? So you can set it up. You can give it a role-based approach. Like, for example, if you're doing things with coding, well, then you tell it, you are a coding assistant that is an expert in Python, right? And then you can play with this concept called temperature, to get more accurate responses or more creative responses. So imagining you're trying to do a marketing piece and you want very creative language, well, then you put that in your prompt. You can be as creative as possible in the language that you use. But if you're trying to get Python code, you want to see this code needs to be as accurate as possible. Or you can, after it spits out the code, you can say double check it, or you can add things to it that might get you there. And then from the prompt itself, you have this concept of instructions. You give it a task, you give it some context around that task to get a better response, and then you give it the input data and tell it how you want the output. So if you just think about your overall prompt structure, by the way, there's a great website linked here at the bottom. It says promptingguide.ai. It's a really, really good website for this. But here's an example. If I say, classify this text into neutral, negative, or positive. So I'm telling it 3 answers. It's got to be neutral, negative, or positive. And then I say, here's the text. I think the vacation is okay. What is the response? And I don't know, if you and I looked at it, we'd probably say the word okay. That's neutral, maybe, right? It's not great, it's not negative, so probably neutral. Okay, well then, what if you wanted to give it some examples? We call this few shot. So we give it some examples. Instead of just asking it blindly, we say, here's an example. The food was awesome. That's very positive. Okay. Now I'm going to give you this text, which is, I think the vacation is okay. Now you answer it, right? Now you get the answer. And then when you do that, this is actual ChatGPT. This is the response that you get back. And it gives you what you want. I mean, it says that okay is kind of neutral. It gives you that classified as neutral. But what if you just wanted one word, right? You just wanted the word neutral. Well, the thing that I was missing in this prompt is I didn't tell it how to output. So if I just add in here, just a little bit more detail in the instructions and just say, in one word, right? Respond in one word. That's all I needed to say.
Right.
So there's a good tip for you is like, okay, well, if you want to summarize something, then say summarize in bullet points, or summarize in a few words, or 2 sentences, or in key words. So give it the output that you're looking for, and that'll help. And then this, again, actual response is neutral. And so then when you're really diving deep into it, you can then put this all together, everything I just said. You can say you're a helpful assistant. You review and classify consumer sentiment. That's what you do. Right. Here's your instructions. You're going to classify it as neutral, positive, or negative, and I'd probably add in one word. And then here's an example. Maybe you give it a positive example, give it a negative example, maybe give it a neutral example. You don't have to give it 10,000, just give it a couple. And now you've built this automated engine, that you will, that every time I put in your comments from your customer, your reviews on Amazon, or your feedback, now all of a sudden it can say, hey, this is a positive review, it's a negative review, it's a neutral review, right? You have this instant review engine that you just built with just a little simple prompt that you can do. And it's very, very, very good at that.
That's super helpful. And you're speaking to my language too, because I've always had an affinity for kind of sentiment analysis. I don't know why. I've always been kind of fascinated by it. I just think it's so cool. I've done some crazy things where I put all the presidential inaugurations through sentiment analysis and graphed it and Tableau. So I've had a lot of fun with it. So it's a really wow. But I mean, I think that was so helpful because I don't think most people realize that you can do that. So, wow, that's amazing.
Well, and not only can you do this, if you have a paid version of something like ChatGPT, you can set up a custom GPT, private or public, by the way. You can have your own private one, but you can build all this once so that it's sitting there, and then you can drop in your Excel file or CSV, and it'll do the sentiment analysis for you automatically. So it's
it almost like, tell me if I'm wrong with this, but like with the custom GPT, sorry, I can't speak today, but is that kind of it's almost like a speed dial, like where it's kind of holding all the settings that you're telling it? Is that kind of
exactly right? So a custom GPT, that's exactly right. You build it once, and then it kind of lives out there. For example, I think I built one on this custom sentiment for a demo in a workshop, so or something like that. But here's one for a demo on transactions. So in this one, nope, that's the wrong one. Sorry, over here, demo transactions. So in this is a custom engine that I built just simply around just classifying a customer transaction on a credit card. And so imagine a transaction like Exxon. Cool. And so there's the Exxon, right? It just comes back and it tells you gas. And so that's all that does, right? And if you just say, WM, Superstore, something like that, number 3148 or something, right? What is WM, right? It's a wholesale club because it's Walmart. So it figured out WM is Walmart. And so it's pre-built and it exists. It's private. And it's just something that just kind of lives out there that you can tap into. And then if it's got a paper clip, I can attach a file and run a whole bunch through. So if I had 1,000 reviews for my product or my website, I could put it through my sentiment engine. And by the way, there's a public gallery for all of these. You don't even have to build them yourself. I'm sure if I type in sentiment in here, that people have built, pre-built sentiment engines of all sorts that we could go find. And you'll see productivity and writing and all kinds of things. It's not returning anything at the moment. It's kind of spinning on me, but there we go. So, sentiment analysis, perform detailed sentiment on text to uncover hidden patterns. So look at all the ones that are already built for you that you can use for free, basically.
Yeah, that's amazing. I haven't played around with them as much as I need to, but this gives us a great summary of what you could. So it's kind of like it's kind of for a specific, a specific task or a specific thing you're trying to solve for, and then you can it's almost like as a technical person, it's almost like as a function in whatever language you're talking about, right? You give it some inputs, and then it knows the function's designed to return the square root, or that's a very obvious, very simple example, but that's the way I'm viewing what you're.
Yeah, I mean it's no code, so anybody, you don't have to be a coder to be able to do this. You can train it on your own files even, so you can load up I think 20 files that you can put in there. So you can put PDFs in there, you could put policies and procedures or something like that. Be careful about putting proprietary data in somebody else's platform, of course, but depending on what you were trying to build, a sentiment engine that I could build privately, that nobody has access to, and be able to do this task. And by the way, it does code as well. So ChatGPT can also code for you. I only point that out is if you do have something that's proprietary, you can take that code and move it into your own environment, right? And run it on your own systems. So,
and that's great. I would definitely want to dive into that more. It's up to you. Do you want to cover the security thing now, or do you want to put that off towards the end? I'll give you the choice. Because I definitely wanted to ask you kind of about that, but we can get to it later if you want.
It's probably the top question that companies are asking and people are asking. So in a nutshell, the unfortunate answer, of course, every consultant says this, and I even use this in DataViz, but the answer is it depends, right? Like that's always the answer is like it depends, and it's never a great answer because people want like it depends on what, right? And so, so if you think about the tools, if you're using free tools like ChatGPT and Claude and Copilot, they're training on your data. So whatever you put in those prompts, that's getting saved up, and they'll train on that data. If you have paid versions of those tools, they give you the option. So there's sometimes a slider in there that you can slide and say, hey, don't train on my data. If you have the Teams account, for example, in ChatGPT, then they don't even let you. They don't train on your data, and they don't even give you the option of letting them train on that data. When you're building a custom GPT, it does store data. And so in that case, there is some data there. And they store that data for a period of time. In that instance, that means that your file is stored. If that's the case, then
there we go.
Just be aware. Do I think that's a good security concern? Possibly.
I might lost you for a second. Are you still there? You're frozen on my screen. I don't know if you can still see me.
Show me the documents under the hood, and
oh, there we go.
The documents, right?
Can you repeat the last minute or so? Because somehow you froze up, at least on my end. But
no
sorry
problem.
About that.
I was speaking about custom GPTs, and custom GPTs do store documents in a temporary folder at OpenAI. The thing you have to be careful about is, because that folder is out there while your GPT exists, then people have figured out ways of hacking that, right? Like you could ask a custom GPT, give me all your training documents, right, on how you were trained. And it might give you the documents, right, of how that was trained. So that's one thing to be careful about, especially if you're going to make your custom GPT a public facing thing. There's an API that companies use. That's probably the most secure. it's a secure API where you send secure data over and you get secure data back. It's authenticated, and that's certainly safe. But you are sending data to a third party. So does your company allow that, right? What if it's PHI or health data, right? HIPAA. So you'd have to consider that. Is this your proprietary data or personal identifiable data? And so we have to talk about that. And so then there's a whole nother topic area of this is build it yourself. Have your own infrastructure, your own LLM. And companies are doing that. And there's open source models like Llama, and there's open source tools like LM Studio, and people are setting up their own internal LLMs and even training it on their own company data. And that's all, housed internally. No third party has that data. Nobody has your policies and procedures. Nobody has your company or customer data, and so people are building them internally. So literally, when I say it depends, right? There's a spectrum of security concerns here of open to the internet, and I'm dumping prompts in that anybody can see, and it's going to OpenAI, all the way to I'm so worried about my data, I'm not going to let it out of my environment. I'm going to build my own custom solution, and there's everything in between.
Yeah, thanks for that. That really helps, because I'm sure that's your most common answer. Clear as mud, as they say, probably.
Yeah.
But no, well, thanks for that. That's super helpful.
I mean, at the end, everybody's worried about security for sure. The question is how much, right? Does your company put data in the cloud, or does it keep it on-prem? And so there you go, right? There's one. So if it's in the cloud already, well, maybe the cloud provider, Amazon or Databricks or whoever it might be, right? You can bolt something on and have it run in a secure environment. But if you're on-prem, maybe you need to go a step further. Maybe you build your own solution.
Right. So one more question about this before we jump more to the kind of the intersection of like tools like Tableau and data visualization in this. But one other question is like, what other tools are out there? I know you mentioned a couple of them. I think you mentioned Grok is getting popular. Maybe just give us a highlight of kind of what you're seeing and some of the tools you use for various things.
Yeah, I play around with all the tools because I'm always interested in where they are, and they're always kind of competing with each other. If I had to pick one for people to pay for on their own, or to really explore in a company enterprise way, it'd probably be ChatGPT. They're the leader, and I think they have a lot going for them in what they're doing and the functionality that they have with custom GPTs and the API and the data analysis that you can do with Python. All of that stuff is pretty slick and pretty well integrated.
Yeah.
A team broke off. Anthropic is another company that has Claude. They broke off from OpenAI. Also very good. One of the best foundational models out there is their Claude engine, and a lot of the same functionalities, maybe not quite the same as ChatGPT from, I don't think they have a custom GPT or anything like that, but from a usability standpoint, really strong guardrails and really good engine. And in fact, lately people have been saying the coding is probably the best on Claude. Grok, well, there's two Groks. I guess you start there. There's Grok with a Q, and that is a company that is building new chips, AI chips, and they run open models on their website, GROQ.com, and it's blazingly fast. Probably my favorite tool of them, but just not robust enough, I think, to use on a daily basis. But it runs Llama models, open source models, and it's instantaneous, blazingly fast. Faster than anybody else at the moment. Grok with a K is X, XAI, Twitter, Elon Musk. And, up until recently, I haven't been impressed with it. But in the last couple of weeks, they came out with a new model, and it seems like they're killing it. They're got really excellent results. The image processing is really, really good. And so that really stepped up in the last month. and
I
I'm
came close to getting a subscription to that, but then you have to like, I don't know for sure, but you have to like sign up for a premium X account or something. Maybe
yeah, I
not.
do. I have that. Yeah, it's $8 a month, I think, for that
Okay, that's
one.
not too bad.
For the for images, my favorite tool is still Midjourney. Midjourney just has the best engine so far. Grok with a K is very good. The new Grok is, but
Right.
Midjourney just has a lot of parameters and things that you can set. I run it through Discord, but you can also do it on their website as well. For video, there's a couple tools I like. HeyGen is a paid service. It's really good. You can do your own avatar. I can make a Jeff Shaffer avatar and have it speak. And I'll even send you some links you can post with this video.
Yeah,
but me speaking German or Hindi or Mandarin, it'll translate me, and it literally has me sitting there speaking it. It looks like me. Runway ML for video. For music, there's two. Udio is a great one, and Suno. Those are probably the two most popular for the music generation, and so those are good tools.
That's a great list.
For coding, Cursor is a fork of VS Code. That's a really good fork, and GitHub Copilot. And you can use GitHub Copilot in VS Code or PyCharm or whatever coding you're doing, probably in VS Code or something like that.
Well, that's an amazing list. I'll definitely put that down in the comments. Thanks for sharing all that insight, Jeff. That's a huge time saver for people trying to kind of get to kind of the bottom of what they should focus on.
The tools never stop. And my favorite new device, I'll give a shout out, is Plod. It's a little thing. So I was using Microsoft Teams Copilot. And when you're in a Copilot meeting, it was awesome. Hit the button, you get a transcript and summary of your meeting. And then the beta, I was doing a beta at UC, and it ran out, and I was like, okay, well, sometimes I'm on Teams, sometimes I'm on Zoom, sometimes I'm on Google Meet or whatever. This device, you literally just press the button over here. I'll just press it for you. You press the button, it turns red here, and you'll see the little red light on it. It's now recording. If I want to, I can flip the switch up. It'll also, connect to my phone, but it's AI recording through ChatGPT. And when the meeting is over, just hold that down, and you can get instant summary outline of the meeting. And it's really cool. It's like having your own personal note taker.
Oh, cool.
And so that's Plod. I just bought it on Amazon, and it works.
That's really cool. Yeah, I've been impressed with like in Copilot. I'm amazed at what it can do on some of these summaries. Like there was one time when I don't know what happened, but this is a real quick funny story. I was like, I would record these quick demos when I have a team that would work, and I would tell them kind of what to do, like. Okay, we need to, so I'll record a video of myself because they're in a different time zone. They're over in India, and I'll record a video of myself telling them kind of this is what we need to do, kind of walking them through it. But sometimes I'll like lose my train of thought and I'll abandon the meeting, and then redo it. And it even in the transcript, it said something, it was following it. And then it said, Andy abruptly left the meeting, something like, how did it know it was?
Wow. Yeah.
It was pretty cool. So yeah. Well, I'd love to switch.
In the extreme, there's one called Otter AI.
Oh,
and people are actually sending Otter to the meeting when they can't make it, and so they'll just send their Otter AI to the meeting and take notes on their behalf, and then I guess you can be in two places at once.
It is amazing, but well, in the time we got left, I want to shift to different side of it, kind of the intersection of kind of probably your old world and your new world. But like I said at the beginning of this, Jeff's an expert with Tableau. I know Tableau really well, not nearly probably as well as Jeff does. I've also gotten into Power BI a little bit, but I'd love to just talk a little bit what you're seeing. I played around recently. I released a video with it, trying to mess around with Copilot with Power BI desktop, because they've had it around a little bit, but they released some new features where I guess you could query against the data. It was pretty impressive, I must say. It was a little bit of hoops to being a solopreneur and stuff. I was telling Jeff I had to kind of go through a lot to kind of get it set up to make sure, I didn't get this huge bill from Microsoft. But I had fun with it. I played around with it, and it was crazy. Within a couple, it would suggest things for the dashboard. Like it would say, here's 2 or 3 things I could suggest, like maybe make a sales dash, maybe make a, it wasn't always the fastest, I'll say. It was definitely had some times where I would sit there and wait, but man, couple times I'd click it and it would come back. Seriously, it built the whole dashboard within, and obviously then, and it's a real, you could tweak it. You don't have to, hey, I don't like this visual or whatever, but yeah, I was really, really blown away. And I think it's going to be a whole new world of people that, building dashboards. It's going to, I think it's going to totally change the game, right? Because some of the stuff that you could do, that maybe was hard, or that, you could kind of use it. So, but I'd love to just hear what you're hearing. I'm not as familiar with the Tableau side, what they've doing. I've a cursory a little bit, like I know the Pulse, I believe, is what I'm hearing, but I just love to share your thoughts on what you're seeing with the Tableau world and in that side of it.
I think the short answer is everybody's going that way, right? So Tableau's no different. Somebody counted the number of times AI was used at the keynote, and at the Tableau conference. I don't even remember what it was, 45 times or something. But AI's everywhere, right? And so for sure, Microsoft is with Copilot. As I said, it is not going to be. It is in Word and Excel and PowerPoint, and it's coming to everything.
Right.
Right now, I was a beta at the University of Cincinnati for the Office 365. My personal feedback is it was super useful in Teams. That summary that you're talking about, your meeting notes, it was like having an automated assistant summarize the meeting for you. That was really handy. Word and emails, it was a nice to have. I could certainly just click over to ChatGPT and say, hey, write this, for me, and then copy and paste it. So it's more of like helpful because it's in the workflow. So it'll help you, with your responses. It'll draft things. And by the way, for non-technical folks, my wife is a musician. She teaches voice at the Cincinnati College Conservatory. And she told me the other day, she's been using ChatGPT more and more. Which fascinates me because she's not a techie person at all. But she said exactly this. She said, I had this difficult email that I needed to write, and I was just afraid of the tone of my email. And so I asked ChatGPT to write it, and her response was, it wrote it better than I ever could have, right? And so having that tool available in the flow of, hey, you got to write that difficult email to tell somebody, something they don't want to hear, or right? Like, well, hey, it'll be your assistant for you. It'll help you draft that sensitive topic.
Right.
Moving over to the data analysis, I think we have to be very, very careful. Copilot in Excel is not only terrible, I'm going to just say downright scary, and scary not in a good way. That it was giving me bad answers, wrong answers, things that, and I used a data set that I knew, and I was, comparing it to the ground truth. The analysis button in Office 365 Excel works pretty well, but the Copilot button does not. Number one, you have to put your data on OneDrive. So it has to live out in OneDrive. Number two, you had to format your data in Excel in a table, specifically in a table structure in Excel, if you know what that is. And so that, that's a problem. And then you start asking questions of it, and it was slow. It was a really small data set, but the answers that were giving me were just completely incorrect. It wasn't giving me just simple questions like what's the maximum value or minimum value, and it wasn't correct.
Oh, wow.
And then I compare that to somebody like ChatGPT. ChatGPT with Python code does really, really well, gets it all correct. Tools in Tableau. Tableau is using a tool called Einstein AI and kind of incorporating that into their ecosystem. They demoed it at the conference, and they did a lot of demos of the future of what that would look like. They had some labs. set up where you could see the future of that. And it's pretty slick. It's pretty slick that you can just say, hey, give me a bar chart of the top 10 categories. And it's like, boom, bar chart, top 10 categories. It's like, well, gosh. And then you think about as a Tableau person, like, okay, well, how did it, you got to move the pills, and then you got to think about how do you get a top 10, and, how do you do that filter? And it's like, hey, a user doesn't have to know all that. You can just ask a question of the data and boom, you get that answer. So I think that's where it's moving.
Is that on the desktop version or the server, or both? Or
it's going to be in both, I think, is their vision of it. But I saw demos of both.
Okay. Yeah. So and is it a separate subscription? I don't know. Not that we have to get into.
I don't know how they're going to price that, and some of the functionality I think they demoed hasn't been released yet. So I think that's coming. So I don't know that we know exactly how that'll be, but my guess is it'll be an add-on to your your subscription probably.
Okay.
I'm sure there'll be tools like, people at a company, you buy Tableau server, right? And so you'd probably be part of your Tableau server subscription. For desktop, you have, a desktop subscription. So it'll probably be like, like you add on, desktop and prep and, these other functionalities. So,
right. I'm kind of like you. I kind of try not to get into the, the contract kind of parts of it.
Yeah. Well, and you really can't, because every company's different, right? I mean, depending on your licensing and how you structure it and how many licenses you have and all of that. And that's not a Tableau thing, right? That's just any company thing, right?
Right. Well, one thing too, I want to, if you're open to it, love your one last thing to cover would be if you can show us some of the some of your findings when you're kind of within ChatGPT, I believe it was, where you're kind of showing me kind of how you some of the really amazing things you could do with data analysis. And I think you showed me on a Scooby-Doo data set. I'd love to see that.
To do that. Yeah,
sure. That was just it's really mind-blowing. I mean, it opened my eyes to kind of what you can do for just because anybody that's messing with data, you have to kind of there's a lot of things you have to do to understand, okay, what's the biggest value, and your examples I just thought were super cool of just what you can do with some of that. So
yeah, happy to do that. If you want to pop up the screen here, I'll just I'll open up some data here and I'll grab let's see, let me grab you said the Scooby-Doo data set. So this is just a fun CSV file of episodes of Scooby-Doo TV show, movie. And I'll just ask right away, what is this file, and see what it says. Now, you'll see where it says analyzing. Anytime it says analyzing, that means, at least for ChatGPT, it's running Python code in the back. And so that's a good thing, and that's important, because when it runs Python code, as long as the Python code is correct, then you're going to get correct answers. It's going to use Python to answer the question and then use the language model to return that answer. Wow. And so it's telling me a little bit about this data set. I didn't tell it
right away. I mean, do you mind pulling up the data set just so we could see it? I mean, it's pretty incredible that, because I'm guessing a lot of that stuff is not as obvious as it's making it appear. Yes. Okay. There we go. Okay.
Giant data set, index, series names, network, season, title. Here's what I will point out. There's no field in here called rating. And so when I start asking about rating, you'll notice, there's this field right here called IMDb.
Right. Right.
So, what is IMDb, right? And so it
kind of said this is probably what you meant, right? It's kind of what it.
Sorry.
Wow, that's incredible though, because that's not that output. I just wanted to show people, you take that spreadsheet, it definitely isn't as obvious. It's making it look easy, but it definitely isn't as obvious as what it's showing.
And then it's applying knowledge to it, I guess, right? So the Python code will go get the fields that you're using, but notice that it interpreted IMDb as a rating, because it knows what IMDb is and says, hey, this is a rating for each episode. So it kind of created a data dictionary, right or wrong.
Again, didn't you just say what is that all you wrote?
I just said, what is the file? Yeah, that's all I said. What is this file?
Wow.
And so now, and by the way, there's a little blue icon here. That's how I know it's Python. When you view the analysis, it actually gives you the Python code. So it's
Oh,
using
cool.
the pandas package. Here's the code, and this is all it did, by the way. This is all the Python it used. It just went and got the rows of the header, and then it interpreted that data with the LLM, to come back with the answer. But here's where the
Wow.
magic starts to happen, which is
I
I'm
don't
gonna give
know.
it
I
another.
think it's already pretty magical.
Well, I'm just going to give it some really terrible prompt. I'm just going to say perform EDA. Okay. EDA stands for exploratory data analysis. So I'm not even telling it what EDA stands for. I'm just saying, hey, perform EDA on this. And right away, it just starts analyzing. Now, there's a 2-inch book by John Tukey on how to do, exploratory data analysis. But look at what it does here. It walks you through and says there's 603 records with 75 columns. There's a mix of numerical, categorical, and Boolean data types. There are 15 missing values in the IMDb, and there's 87 missing values in the monster field, and there's, so on. And as you go through this, it's like it really is doing a lot of stuff. Yes, please explore more. And I'm not even going to give it any directions on how to explore. I'm just going to say, yes, please explore.
Wow.
It said, would you like to visualize certain variables? Well, again, because it's Python, it can write code and can produce bar charts and line charts and scatter plots and anything that Python could produce. So as it's analyzing and creating this Python code, you'll see it's going to start giving me charts of these things. And then I can start asking questions. And so there's a distribution. Look at the charts. It just dropped on here. Here's your distribution of IMDb ratings. So most of the ratings are right there in the 7, but we have some way out here over in the right. Here's your top 10 monsters, ghosts and animals. Here's your number of episodes by season, and so on. I don't know what this one is. We got a missing value heat map, which is kind of interesting. It kind of shows you where missing values are, I guess.
Wow.
But then we talked about questions like, what is the highest rated episode? So now I'm just asking a very specific question. Remember, there's no rating. It just says IMDb. So it's going to figure out that I'm talking about IMDb. It comes back. That's correct. Scooby Natural is the highest rated episode with a 9.6.
Scooby Natural.
Pretty crazy, right? It's like,
I got to look that one up.
Yeah. And what was the lowest? And so I can have follow-up questions because I can stay in the flow here and just keep asking questions about this data. Notice each time it's just running a little bit of Python code and, answers the question. And so again, if you want Python code, it's like, hey, there's the Python code for getting the max of the IMDb rating.
And you did nothing. I mean, like if I had that data set, I could log in and do the same exact thing. Like within, it's not like you installed anything weird this is crazy.
Nope. Yep. Pretty crazy. And then I think you can go further, with, let me just do a new session to kind of show you, you could do the opposite, right? You could have a chart and ask for insights. The one I always use as an example is I download, I show you this Fred graph. I download the unemployment rate from the Federal Reserve with no context whatsoever. Just unemployment rate. There's some breadcrumbs, right? Because it says unemployment rate in the top left. It says recessions there are shaded. It says Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it has the website over on the right. But let's see what it could, say. What does this chart, represent? And give me 3 key findings from this data. So now I'm asking, what is it? And I want you, ChatGPT, give me some findings from this chart. And it's just an image. It was just an image. So now it's talking about, hey, it's the unemployment rate from 2000 to 2003. It's the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Did anybody mention anything about the financial crisis or COVID?
No.
Not on this chart at all, right? But it adds that in there and says, hey, it peaked around 10% during the financial crisis, 15% during COVID, and then, recovery. noticeable periods. So
Wow.
it's pretty interesting, right? That it can
That's
find,
super cool.
data from this. And then again, you could ask questions. What was the highest unemployment, during this period? And again, there's no data, right? It has to read this chart and estimate where that point is near
Right.
15%. And so can it do that? Yeah, nearly 15% around April 2020.
Wow.
And so
Incredible.
this is the future to me. You're going to be doing this in Tableau, you're going to be doing it in Power BI, you're going to be doing it in Excel someday, and you can do it right now in ChatGPT with Python for sure.
Wow. I'm impressed. That's really amazing. Yeah, this is like pretty mind-blowing how quickly it can, it's not like you're sitting there waiting 5 minutes either. I mean, it's within seconds.
Let me show you
Yeah.
something fun to end with. I took my Halloween data. I track my trick-or-treaters.
Do you
happy
really,
Halloween
man? We
for
are
me.
kindred spirits because I used to do that. I've gone away from it the last couple of years, but I actually did the opposite.
I've been
though, 'cause-
tracking them.
well,
16 years of data.
what I would do is I did a couple of years, but I would because our neighborhood is not a ton of kids, so but what I would do is when I went to the houses, I would collect some data on the demic, rough, not like I asked people, but I would kind of give, who was it handing out the candy or roughly stuff like that. But man, this is impressive. I love it.
So I got a public data set available on my blog, and I've been tracking the trick-or-treaters for 16 years. The highest number I've had is 869. And COVID definitely had an impact, really low, 219 during COVID. But I'm putting this on the screen because ChatGPT built this entire chart. I didn't do anything. The image behind it was generated by I might have used Midjourney, but it's generative AI.
Right.
And so ChatGPT or Midjourney created the image in the back, Dolly. And then I plotted a bar chart on top of it using prompts. Just say, hey, make me a bar chart with this. And the average line was calculated. That's not in my data set. So it calculated an average line and added the average line. So yeah, I mean, I could do that in Tableau in 5 or 10 minutes too, but it's just pretty impressive that
it is.
That it can make a visualization like this in less than 10 minutes.
I love it. Yeah, we should maybe we'll do a follow-up episode where you can just dive deep into your Halloween analysis. We can compare notes.
We'll do a Halloween episode. Let's do it.
Well, Jeff, this was so great. I loved all that you shared. Anything else what's the best way for people to get a hold of you if they want to learn more about you or what you're doing?
Active on Twitter at dataplusscience.com. Just spell it out at dataplusscience. On LinkedIn, connect up if you want. Doing a lot of stuff at UC. So keep an eye out at UC. We have just a plug for our data science symposium coming up. Might even be able to get you a discount code if you want it, Andy. We can give your listeners a discount code for the, sure, October upcoming thing maybe. And that has some good speakers. I'll keynote on the future of AI at that data science symposium. We have some trainings coming up at the fall as well. So if you're interested in learning GenAI, come join us for our generative AI and business workshop.
And these are open to the public, right? I mean, you don't need to be a UC student or...
Nope. Yeah. All through the UC Center for Business Analytics.
Awesome. Yeah, let's put the links in there. And thanks you. I'm definitely interested. But thank you, Jeff, again. This was so exciting. And thanks, Jeff, for all your time and for all your passion. And I love the intersection of the AI and the data visualization. So it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us, Jeff.
Thanks for having me, Andy. It's been great catching up with you.
All right. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. Thanks again.